You're watching the Daily Climate Show on Sky News. On today's programme, residents and tourists in Athens are evacuated as wildfires continue to burn across Europe. We'll analyse the current intensity of heat waves and what that could mean for wildfires in the UK in the future. Plus, the Prime Minister has been told he is missing in action on climate change as he visits Scotland ahead of the crucial climate summit. And the petrol price rise, which could make the shift to electric come sooner than we thought. Hello and welcome to the UK's only daily climate news show, where we track the changes happening to our world right now and meet those coming up with the solutions. Straight to Europe now, where wildfires are still burning and forcing people out of their homes. For a second day in Greece, acres of land have been scorched near the capital, Athens. In a moment, we'll have a look at what these extreme temperatures could mean in the UK. In Turkey, fires are burning for an eighth day and there is growing anger, with the government accused of failing to get a grip on fires affecting parts of the country. Firefighters are cutting back trees to stop their spread. The fires have been made worse by unusually hot temperatures, low humidity and high winds. And thousands have been forced to evacuate Athens in Greece, where firefighters are tackling huge fires in the north of the city. The blaze has been made worse by what Greek authorities are calling the worst heatwave in decades, with temperatures in parts of the country reaching 46.3 degrees Celsius. Let's go to Greece now and speak to our Europe correspondent, Michelle Clifford. She's in an area on the outskirts of Athens. Michelle, hello to you. What's happening where you are?
Well, there have been dozens of fires across Greece over the last couple of days, but the area around here saw the biggest blazes. We're about 20 kilometres from Athens city, and the blaze surrounded a village called Vari Bobby, where I'm standing now. Now, residents were evacuated, and when they come back, they're going to see some really quite horrific scenes. This house behind me is where a 95-year-old woman and her 98-year-old husband lived. It's completely destroyed, as is the land. If we look all around the property, everything is completely scorched. Now, this was a family plot. Their son lived in this house over here. That is incredibly badly damaged. I spoke to him earlier and he said they were in their property yesterday around lunchtime and they could see the fires and they seemed to be a long way in the distance. And then he said within 10 minutes the fires were on top of them and they had to drive through the flames to get out. Now, 800 firefighters overnight tried to tackle the blazes. They were very intense. Today, they seem to have got most of the big flames out. The big problem, though, now is that the whole landscape around here is smouldering. There is the potential for more fires to ignite and turn into something really massive all over again.
OK, Michelle, thank you. Well, let's take a look at what's happening in Europe. The south of Europe is usually the worst affected by wildfires, with countries like Spain seeing a weekly average of 80 fires in July between 2008 and 2020. But 2021 has been especially bad for the region, particularly for countries like France and Turkey. Since the start of the summer, countries in southern Europe have seen a surge in the number of wildfires compared to the same period in previous years. In Italy, for example, at the start of August, the figures were already double the average. But the environmental impact has been most pronounced for Turkey, which saw over 150,000 hectares of land burnt at the start of August. That is more than 9 times the average that was seen between 2008 and 2020. So could we be seeing similar scenes in the UK? Well, the June 2018 Saddleworth Moor fires were some of the largest UK wildfires on record and lasted for about 3 weeks. At their peak, they covered an area of 4,480 acres of moorland. In 2019, there were fires in both Moray and Caithness in Scotland that scorched about 29,000 acres. In Northern Ireland, there have been more than 1,000 wildfires in the Mourne Mountains over the last 5 years. And in April this year, a huge wildfire on those mountains was declared a major incident, damaging 494 acres of land. Let's speak to Professor Stephen Doerr, who's the director at the Centre for Wildfire Research at Swansea University. Professor, thank you so much for talking to us here on The Climate Show. So what do you think? Do you think we could see similar fires here that we're seeing in Europe and Turkey?
Well, unfortunately, not quite, because most of the fires we have in the UK affect moorland, grassland, and shrubland areas. So these fires tend not to be so severe. But sometimes we do have forest fires occurring. And whilst we not yet have those extreme weather conditions that we see in the Mediterranean, they're certainly becoming more severe. All the climate models are in agreement that in the future we will get more severe fire weather, which make forest fires with big flames like we see there more likely.
And what would happen if we did see fires like that here?
Well, these fires, as we've seen in the media, are extremely difficult to control. So we should do everything to avoid extreme forest fires.
Well, what are we doing? Are we mitigating in any way so that we don't see the same situation here?
Well, there are a number of things we can do, fortunately, in the UK, because nearly all fires here are human caused. That could be by arson, that could be by accident, and we can reduce the chances of those ignitions. We can also manage our fuels more intensely, so we can remove dead and dry vegetation in the landscape, either manually or using controlled fires, which will have a strong effect in reducing fire risk.
And is that being done?
Not yet in the UK in terms of, let's say, at larger scales, but there are experiments and small-scale approaches in the UK where prescribed fire, for example, is used to reduce the flammability of the landscape under conditions when fires are not extreme, so in the spring or late in the autumn. And this will then help reduce the risk during the summer and later in the spring when the fuels can be very dry.
Okay, Professor, thank you so much for talking to us. And staying with wildfires, in California, a fire that has been burning since June has intensified in the last 24 hours. Evacuations were ordered for about 1,000 people because of the Dixie Fire that's grown to over 395 square miles across the Plumas and Butte counties in Northern California. So let's take you over to our data dashboard now. Here at the top is the real-time power mix in the UK, and you can see renewables make up 38% and fossil fuels 43%. And that, of course, has an impact on global temperatures. This shows the human-induced global warming since the Industrial Revolution, and it is ticking up the whole time. The aim, agreed by 196 parties at the UN COP21 summit in Paris in 2015, is to keep this number under 2 degrees, preferably to 1.5 degrees of warming. This is the time left to that crucial 1.5 degrees. Right, to some other news on climate change now, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has issued its hurricane season forecast for 2021. They've predicted that the likelihood of an above normal 2021 Atlantic hurricane season is 65%, with 15 to 21 named storms. Scientists warn that warmer ocean temperatures and higher sea levels will make hurricanes more powerful and destructive, posing a significant risk to public health and to human lives. Reusing and repairing household goods could create more than 450,000 jobs across the UK by 2035. The think tank Green Alliance found that roles in engineering, machinery repair and administration could be created while curbing the UK's unsustainable throwaway culture. Jobs in manufacturing are predicted to decline, but researchers say funding redesign and repair initiatives could ensure future employment in the sector. And finally, a study has found that 98% of emperor penguin colonies are in danger of extinction by the end of the century if the Antarctic continues to melt at its current rate. That's because the flightless species depend on sea ice to breed and raise their young. But the species decline can be halted if warming is kept to under 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial temperatures. Well, COP26 will be held in Glasgow in November, and ahead of that, Boris Johnson is visiting renewable energy projects in Scotland while on a 2-day visit from today. But the opposition leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has already accused the Prime Minister of being off track to meet his own climate targets.
We need a strategic plan to enable us to transition, whether that's cars, whether it's energy, whether it's wind turbines, here in Scotland, hugely important, a strategic plan. And what we've seen from the SNP here and from the UK government is lots of targets, lots of ambitions, not matched by reality.
Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Joe Pike, who's in Fife. Joe, pressure on the PM while he's up in Scotland.
Certainly, Kimberly, there is pressure on Boris Johnson. Both the Prime Minister and the Labour leader are here on two-day trips. And remarkably similar in focus, Keir Starmer at a nature reserve today in Glasgow, talking about the run-up to the COP climate conference in that city, Scotland's biggest in November. Boris Johnson today has actually been meeting policing leaders, but that has a climate change link too, because, of course, the force, Police Scotland, will be mounting that massive security operation around the conference, protecting the heads of state and heads of government attending it. It's tomorrow where Boris Johnson will be visiting, I understand, more climate change linked projects, saying the government is investing in renewable energy and in green technology as well. I think all of this does show that this issue has risen up the political agenda. A research published recently suggests that the biggest risk that voters think that the UK faces is, after the pandemic, climate change, and therefore they want their politicians to explain how they are planning to tackle it.
OK, Joe, thank you. Well, one way to reach those climate emissions is the shift from petrol to electric vehicles. And today it's being warned that petrol prices have reached an 8-year high in the UK. But does a rise in fuel costs outweigh the upfront cost of an electric car? Our business correspondent, Helen Smith, has been looking into this. She joins us now. So, Helen, are the rise in prices going to have an effect?
Well, it's really difficult to tell, Kimberly, and it's difficult to tell because there's a lot of complicated factors going into this. Firstly, that very high price we're seeing at the petrol pump at the moment, it won't necessarily last. It's come about because of a variety of complicated reasons, but problems at every stage in the supply chain because of the pandemic, from the oil rigs all the way to the petrol stations, and also a classic supply and demand problem. At the beginning of the pandemic, no one was driving and flying so much. The oil-producing countries produce less. Now the economy's reopened, everybody wants more, there isn't so much to go around, the prices go up. So that may not be sustained. The other reason it may not necessarily push people towards electric is, of course, what we always talk about, isn't it? The cost of electric vehicles. Because even though an electric car is cheaper to run once you've got it, that big upfront cost is still there for people. And if you're the sort of family or the sort of individual who's struggling for an extra 20p or so on the mile at the petrol pump, it's unlikely you'll be able to foot that big bill for an electric car. Now, groups like the RAC, they're saying that the government and others should use this moment as a big incentive to try and push more people over the edge who are perhaps already considering electric. This is what they had to say.
Perhaps there is an opportunity now to really capitalise on the lower rates that EV drivers can enjoy and get more people into those. But the answer really is around kind of flooding the market with new electric vehicles. We know at the RAC that most drivers still buy their cars second or third hand. So the only way those drivers are going to be able to afford electric ones is if there's enough supply at the top.
Well, that's everything from us today. On tomorrow's show, Green Gaming, how developers are using games to inspire players to make changes to their own lives. Thank you for watching. See you then.